back to the Tales of Hinsdale. We have Ryan Wefelmeyer with us. I don't know what he just did.
Episode 2.
Oh, got it. Okay, there were some weird hand gestures happening.
Carol got it.
We've got Carol and Ty, and we're here to talk more about the Hinsdale Archives. Ryan, we've talked a lot about your prep and getting ready for this, and there was one question that came to mind. You know, the Hinsdale Archives indicates that you really are digging deep and creating a library of information. Was that your intention when you went there first?
When I went there first, it wasn't. I was going to just go as like a one-night thing, maybe revisit again. And then just after the experiences of my first time there, I knew I had to go back. I knew it was something different. And then the second time that I was there, it was just entirely different from the first time. And it just started to snowball on itself. And I had the idea of, I need to collect everything that's happening and really document everything and put it all together and let people see what really is behind the scenes at that house and what it can really be like.
For sure. And like you were saying, there's a lot of people who are visiting now. Dan does a great job renovating it, and he's such a wonderful person.
Yeah, he's freaking nice.
Absolutely. And it gives investigators a good opportunity to really get in there and investigate and collect data as you have. It's also really great that they have all of these resources to kind of see the truth of what's going on there, just to be prepared.
Right.
That being said, you use a lot of different tools, both metaphysical and technological. Tell me a little bit about the technology that you bring along.
And create. I know you make your own stuff, so like that's pretty cool. Give yourself a giant plug and pat on the back for that.
Yeah, the main tool that I use, I developed it. It started out as something simple to just basically hold the camera so that it was like a portable tripod, but nothing big and bulky. And it eventually developed into something that it films nearly 360 degrees in full spectrum, and it measures the environment in live time. So I'm seeing geomagnetics, I'm seeing electromagnetics, radio waves, I'm seeing everything that's natural and man-made going in and out of that environment. And especially there's also static sensors along with that, so I can see what exactly is being manipulated. And that way, instead of also having one quick walkthrough in the beginning, where you get a baseline reading of everything, I have a constant baseline, and I can see what exactly is changing, when it's changing. It's all logged. I can graph it out. Everything's there for me to look at later and correlate with the events that we were experiencing and catching on film.
That is so awesome, having that justification.
I love it too, because then you can start to knowing or being in a house like Hinsdale as often as you've been in there. It creates the ability to not just learn about the house, but to learn about the tech too. Because you can be like, you know, static's going crazy, but what does that really mean?
Right.
Well, when you're in the Hinsdale house, you can start to correlate what an increase in static might mean 20 minutes from now when the refrigerator walks across the room. So it's...
This is already bad because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much information. We have to go back. We have to...
See, it's got its hooks in you. If you guys want, the last episode, we explained why we have to keep Anna away from the house as she's the lone survivor.
I need data! I love data!
She's spiraling.
It's fine. We're fine.
Just talking about it.
Bring her back.
So, okay, it's incredible that you have your own technology that you create and bring. Tell me a little bit about the metaphysical side. You did a lot with the Well of Intentions, which these guys had a huge hand in creating. I was a little jealous of that, by the way, when we were filming the episode. I wanted so bad to get in there.
Your mom would have killed you.
It probably. I would not be here. I would be, yes. It would be bad. Anyway, so I'm going to actually throw the question to you guys first of when you were creating that, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? How did that change the investigation for you guys?
I was anxious. I just totally unknown to me, you know what I mean? I was like, what are we getting ourselves into? But I also had this feeling like it was gonna trigger something or spark something, you know what I mean?
We had a crazy evening, and then there's this giant rectangle that's underneath like old cloth, and he like rips it apart and lets us know that we're going to be creating a haunted object inside of a haunted house. And so, like Carol said, the anxiety was huge, knowing that like as you're meditating and you're taking your thumb and you're putting it on there and drawing it. I'm actually doing mine right now.
Great. Hinsdale is now in this apartment.
You're turning it on. No, mine's the protection one.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry, my bad.
There you go. But I imagine that as long as those sigils stay on the back of the Well of Intentions, everything's good, and it's a telephone. We just need to make sure that no one ever scrapes those off when they're visiting the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult.
That's true.
Right.
As he takes a sip.
Out his Capri Sun.
Taking a hit.
Now, you actually used it directly as a telephone, as a window. You coordinated with Greg. So tell us a little bit about the evidence that you got from that, and if you felt like it coordinated with the intentions that the well was created with.
I think that it was definitely proving to be a direct link, like a window to it. Even Greg had said on my end, I was experiencing a lot of difficulties getting to the house and doing the solo experiment. And then on his end, the mirror, he said, had a lot of tapping on it. It's almost like the house wanted me by myself. And then on their end, it was letting them know that it's aware of everything that's going on. And when we started this, I had no communication with him other than like he would message me at one point asking if I was inside or outside. But other than that, no real communication. I didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know what I was doing. And in the beginning, for the first like half hour or so, the device that I built, Evie, I have the capability to remotely listen. So since the best evidence happens when nobody's there, I let that device sit in the house and I sat in my truck outside listening wirelessly while Greg was working with the well to see what I was hearing. And it correlates quite a bit. Like he talks about letting me know that there's definitely a connection. And that's when I actually caught the portal, which I didn't hear from the wireless headphones. But right afterwards, I was hearing walking. I was hearing like somebody mumbling through the house. I was hearing things like that. And then I went back in the house, and he was under Estes method, and I was asking questions. And it was almost at one point like it was finishing my statements. So I said, if you're talking to Greg now, tell him the phrase, "This happened at Hinsdale." And his immediate response to that on his end was, "Home of Nexus," like it was finishing my statement.
No!
Yeah.
I don't need that in my life.
She does need it, is the problem.
No,
That's
she
the problem
does
that
not.
we're seeing.
That's incredible.
I love it.
It's the fact that you have that, the fact that you created it, the fact that all of this kind of comes together. I mean, there are moments that I doubt this paranormal world that we live in, and then it's moments like this that it's like, holy crap.
Oh my God, it works.
It's insane.
You know?
It's so cool. After you used it, did it get spookier?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
no!
Like literally, I'm at the kitchen table and I'm like, I feel like it's about midnight, and I was like, I feel like Greg finished the experiment. It was almost like sitting at the kitchen that this darkness was like starting to surround me, and my anxiety went up, my heart rate went up. And then I got the message from Greg that he closed the experiment. They were done on their end. And it was almost like this voice in my head was like, you need to leave. And so I was like, before things get more intense than they already are, I'm going to leave. Just the vibe in that place just shifted entirely. And that was when I called it a wrap for that night and started the isolation phase.
Good
Nice.
for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, that was smart. Shut that down. You also had the Estes method out quite a bit. Now, I think we've used the Estes method with the mirror in other places, just sort of experimenting as well. You seem to have a lot of really interesting answers.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the most impactful ones to your research? Because I feel like the Estes method is cool, but we all know the Hinsdale House is a haunted house at this point, you know, so
Right.
like there's that. What helped your research the most with the Estes method?
Throughout the past, all the way leading up to this past summer, filming the last 2 episodes, the Estes method, even just using a spirit box, it's typically quiet, or you'll get some answers here and there, but the house typically doesn't directly answer questions. It likes to wait till you're not paying attention, or like it'll leave EVPs or impact you more or less on like an emotional scale, so that you're not getting your typical content, you're getting more of a personal experience. But when it shifted, what really impacted the most was when the discovery of that portal and opening that up and having the whole thing shift to more of like a coded message, and these really weird frequencies that were coming through, and along with that, getting personal visions and stuff like that of bright lights and seeing like a long, elongated face that wasn't really human. Um, that is what impacted the most because one, we've never had that before, and two, those kind of frequencies haven't come through in the past several years of doing investigations there. And then suddenly, after that portal discovery and basically kicking that door open, all this new stuff started flooding out. Really, it's not only solidifying my own theories, but backing up what Clara talks about in her books about the UFO activity they experienced when they lived there.
It's all connected, it seems like, and your
It
research
does.
kind of pulls it all together, which
Yeah.
is really cool. Well, I think that people, again, I'm going to do a plug for the Hinsdale Archives. If you guys are just finding us now, and this is your first touch upon the Hinsdale House, make sure that you jet over to Amazon Prime right now. Ryan's entire series is out there. It's the Hinsdale Archives. Just search it in Amazon Prime, look up Ryan Wefelmeyer, and then get your dose of deep research about this house.
Worth it.
Absolutely. We were really excited to see that you had that sort of Morse code thing come up, because we did too, and it blew our minds, because then we also started to have sort of associations with maybe UFOs, maybe something, watching down on us, something from up above. It wasn't at the Hinsdale house, but it was elsewhere, which I think in its own way really lends credence to this.
Yeah.
Utilizing the same method that he's talking about.
Exactly.
I don't love alien stuff. It's the part that freaks me out, and I leave it for Carol.
I don't love it either.
Carol's like, I didn't ask for this.
It loves her. But I think the hard part is that hearing it on your episode, it does sound like Morse code. Our episode, it does sound like Morse code too. Then being unable to translate that because it's too much, too fast, too garbled, but it's not talking, it's something else trying to figure out an energetic way to communicate.
Right.
That's not a dialect. And so it's like, why is it making just a little bit harder? And I felt like the Hinsdale House did that in almost a way. And one of my theories is that it dangles the answers or the questions in front of you just enough that you become like the old Looney Tunes where you put the carrot in front of like the donkey and they just start walking along not realizing that they're working for you. And I imagine that the Hinsdale House, there might be a little of that going along where it's just like, here's the carrot. Now let's keep the people, working for Hinsdale.
Be the
And
legs.
we'll never let you catch the carrot, though. So just as soon as, Ryan on episode 5, they seemed to be getting pretty chill in the house. And then it threw that in at Amanda, and she was like, I don't understand what's going on.
Right.
Back in it. That's, I think, a Hinsdale trait. Would you agree, or?
Oh yeah, I would agree that it's not only doing that, but every time you think you have something figured out for it, something new gets thrown in the loop, and it makes you realize you don't have the answers that you thought you did. And then even when we were getting that to kind of rule out interference, the second day we were there, when we were under Estes Method in Laura's room, we weren't getting that. And then I told Maria, I was like, notice we're not getting the frequencies. And as soon as I said that, Amanda, who's under Estes Method, can't hear what I'm saying anyway. She goes, it's quiet except for that boop boop sound. And so it's almost like it waits for me to like pull at that a little bit. And I guess in that scenario, maybe it was also trying to use that as like a confirmation.
Ew.
Sean.
Ew. Ew, David. You mentioned last episode that, and really right now, that the Hinsdale House kind of pulls people in and it hooks into people. We all kind of have stories like that. Speaking of Laura's room, while we were up there and Ty was looking in the mirror, I had this moment where it was like this big, really like viney black thing was just like starting to spread out from inside that room and just sort of take over. And Ty had his own sort of moment where there were things like
The
that
hooks and the
happening.
springs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I
freaked
will
me
leave it to
out.
you to describe. That is not my story to tell.
I think it was, I never see anything but if some place is going to push you to see something, it's that place. And so I was exhausted. I think I had gone down at that point. But I remember looking around the room, and the previous people who had to leave the house and had to recharge and come back in it was, I don't know, the only way to put it is it was like the end of an ant leg or like a spider leg. They have microscopic. They have the weird little hooky thing. It was like that,
barbs
attached to like an umbilical cord that was like going into the floor. And it was like, I realized that the people in the room who looked exhausted had one in their forehead. And
that was like way worse the way you described it. Wow, that's really awful.
That's what you asked. But like knowing that we were there with Dana, so I explained it to her, and then she was like, "Oh no!" And
no, you explained it to me too, and it was so real. Like I know you were seeing that in your head. Like I know the way you were explaining it, and I'm like, "That's not good." We need to start cutting these things.
I don't see things. Let's hack away.
Yeah.
So Dana starts clearing stuff up, and Carol's just like Italian judo chopping through, getting it.
Was that a thing?
She's violent. Carol's.
What?
She goes for it.
Keeps
us safe.
In my mind, those stories are kind of like what define Nexus. In your experience and in doing the Hinsdale Archives, like, do you have a similar definition for it? Is it the portal? What is Nexus?
I think it's a hub. I think that the location's very good at pulling people in, and I don't know if it's the history or the location itself, but there's something there that's got a lot more power than it would anywhere else. But I feel like that this place is connected to other locations, and that it's connected to things a lot larger than itself. So I think that it's basically just like a crossing station, like just an area where everything kind of intertwines and mingles, and it spreads a lot further than we realize, and it's so much more than just that location.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that based on what I saw in the mirror, and you saw too. Mm-hmm. But I think that we have to wrap this segment up, right?
We do. We
have another segment coming up after this, if you guys want to tune in next time. But Anna, what are we going to be diving a little bit deeper into next time?
Next time we're going to talk about expanding outside of the house, because those grounds themselves have their own life to them.
Yeah, Ryan, I want to know about the pond. But that'll have to wait until next time.
Absolutely.
So before we wrap this up, make sure that you are watching the Hinsdale Archives. It's out now on Amazon Prime. It's the culmination of like 4 or 5 years of work that you've been doing, Ryan. So definitely give it a watch. Give it a high rating over on Amazon. I'm sure Ryan will be happy that you do it. All of our links are down in the description, including that one, and we will be back next time with more Tales of Hinsdale.
Tales of Hinsdale.
That's the title of this interview series, because we're between seasons of Haunt Me, and this stuff is cool. So until next time.